We got a brand new merch design, the three pure-blooded Saiyans in their most powerful forms. Ultra Instinct, Ultra Ego, and Full Power Broly right now in the Geekdom 101 store. Get it in many colors and sizes, a variety of options for you to choose from. Whatever you think looks the best. And if you don't want like a regular shirt, there are tons of different design choices. You can get a mouse pad. You can even get it on a hat or a baseball cap. For a limited time only, the link will be in the description. Welcome to our Dragon Ball Daima episode 5 breakdown, covering all the things you missed in the 5th episode of Dragon Ball Daima called Pansy. The band is together finally. Let's break down all the big events of Dragon Ball Daima episode 5 and things you may have missed. The early conversation with Pansy and Goku discussed the fact that his ears are round, so she immediately knows that he is not from the demon realm. He tells her that he's a Saiyan, but she's never heard the word Saiyan, or at least it doesn't seem to ring a bell. Glorio speaks up and answers the second, which is strange. Is he confirming that Goku and the Saiyans are from the second demon realm? Or is he talking about the Supreme Kai? That is something that totally escaped me the first time watching this episode, because now I'm wondering if Glorio maybe assumed incorrectly, or if he's actually telling us, the audience, that Saiyans were indeed birthed in the demon realm. There have been so many theories going around about this now for weeks since Daima started, and I think a lot of folks are wondering, but right now it still feels like it could be either of the two. So they end up bringing her along because she knows the way to the castle, and we're going to find out exactly how much she knows very shortly, because it's a lot more than she gave away initially. Elsewhere, Goma's military police all wake up after being thrashed by Goku in the previous episode, and they recognize him, or they know him as the spiky-haired kid with a red stick. So obviously this information is going to eventually get back to Goma that Goku is indeed now in the demon realm and coming for him. The name Pansy is based off the pansy flower. Just like Glorio, who's also named after a flower, these character names are puns on flowers, and several of the members of the demon realm are set to have names that are all flower-based puns. In Dragon Ball, every character, their names are puns for something, usually in groups. For example, the Saiyans are all named after vegetables, like Kakarot is carrot, Vegeta is vegetable, Tarbell, of course, being the second half, his brother. You've got Broccoli as Broly, you've got Bardock as the burdock onion, Nappa is cabbage. They're all puns in either English, Japanese, or some kind of mix between the two languages. Goku tells Pansy at one point that his name is also Kakarot. Now, I'm not sure if maybe he's thinking that she may have heard of his original Saiyan name, but this is only one of a very, very few amount of times that Goku has referred to himself as Kakarot. Remember, in the early parts of the Z portion of the story, Goku didn't even accept that he was a Saiyan. He didn't even accept what Raditz told him, because to everyone else, he's Son Goku raised on Earth. And he thought he was from Earth until Raditz revealed the truth. So it's interesting that at the only time in recent memory that Goku referred to himself as Kakarot was at the end of Dragon Ball Super Broly. But remember, that line was put in by the director Nagamine to sort of be a little bit of an Easter egg, like this video is, a wink wink to the old Broly and his constant screaming of Kakarot. Ironically, or maybe perhaps not so ironically, the new Broly doesn't really scream Kakarot at all. At least we haven't seen him do it yet. An interesting bit of lore from Pansy is that every Majin, that is to say every member of the demon realm, knows at least one magic spell. They have some sort of familiarity with magic. Goku, of course, is more apt at using Ki, but we've learned that in the demon realm, magic and Ki are sort of like cousins in that they both are energy-based techniques or knowledge of energy, but they work differently. If you remember, the original name of the show was Dragon Ball Magic. We see Goku, of course, saying he can touch his nose with his tongue, but that's not really what she had in mind. Pansy's idea of magic is basically the ability to have telekinesis, to make rocks move with her mind. That's her ability. That's one of her magical abilities that, of course, characters in Dragon Ball know how to use or know how to do with ki. Now, where is this a reference to? What is Toriyama referencing here and the staff at Toei with her lifting rocks? Well, we mentioned multiple times every week here that there's tons of Star Wars and tons of JRPG influence in this show. Let's not forget who was moving rocks with the power of his mind in The Empire Strikes Back: Luke Skywalker. And Pansy herself may be modeled after a very popular Star Wars character. More on that shortly. Pansy then reveals that her specialty is tinkering with machines. Now, who does this sound like? Sounds a lot like Bulma. Pansy and Bulma are basically sisters from different mothers, in the sense of they seem to be similar characters and are probably going to get along very well. We see in the end credits that there are scenes of Pansy and Bulma together, so they're probably going to hit it off because of their love of tech. And it's good to have more than one scientist on the team. This is somewhat supposed to mirror original Dragon Ball, because Bulma was sort of like the tech whiz in that show, alongside Goku doing the fighting. Here, it seems to be a similar echo. The first time I saw this dragon appear in the show, I thought that I accidentally put on Digimon, because man, this looks a lot like Greymon. I mean, a ton like Greymon, but it's not. It's just one of Toriyama's many dragons, and we saw this dragon in one of the early trailers for Daima. Now we see it there as a transitional creature, sort of creating a transition shot from one shot to another. Very creatively done, I must say. Pansy recognizes that Shin is a Glind, which we found out in one of the previous episodes is a member of the second world of the demon realm. And she also reveals to Shin, even though he already knows, that Goma's second in command is also a Glind. This, of course, being Degasu, the Makayo Shin. They are siblings. Pansy starts to ask a lot of questions and get very suspicious, and reveals that almost nobody comes to the demon realm, the third demon world, aside from business, which of course leads to the very suspicious Glorio telling her to shut up and stop asking questions. This guy has a definitive secret that he's keeping, and we need to look into this, because every episode we get more and more clues, and never before have we gotten a much stronger hint of this than this episode, for certain. Another bit of lore dropping is that we find out from Pansy that the average lifespan in the demon realm is only 1,000 years, which means that Neba is probably more than 1,000 years old. And that's pretty easy to figure out, because if you remember at the very first episode of Daima, and we discussed this in the last Easter egg video, Goma promises Neba to live another 1,000 years. So once again, it seems like the wealthy and the powerful take their life and make their lives, they extend their lives out further by taking the life energy away from the citizens. 1,000 years may not seem like a long time for her, but for Goku it certainly seems like quite some time. Pansy herself reveals herself to be 82 years old. Now, who's the other person that we know of in science fiction that's famous for being old but not looking so old? Well, there's Yoda, who is 900 years old during the time of The Empire Strikes Back. And we are introduced to Baby Yoda, later named as Grogu, who is 50 years old in the Mandalorian. I almost said Mongolian. In the Mandalorian, but he's a baby. Once again, Daima borrows from Star Wars. After making their way further down, after going through some cliffs and some wastelands, we finally arrive at Kadan Castle, which is the place where the third demon realm ruler, King Kadan, is at. The guy who presumably sent Glorio to go find Goku, even though we find out that that's not exactly what happened. More on that in just a moment. When Goku asks what the king is like, Glorio says, think of him as an uncivilized mafia boss. That put a smile on my face because, once again, the Star Wars references continue because this sounds quite a bit like Jabba the Hutt. In fact, if you go back and watch Return of the Jedi, the canyons that lead to Jabba's palace very much resemble this part of the demon realm. Daima is borrowing so much from Star Wars time and time again, and it really does feel like Toriyama's love letter to Star Wars, going back to his fandom of watching that film when he was much younger in the theater when it first came out. A couple more things I want to throw in here that were translation related. Firstly, has to do with the name Panji. This is not the first character with that name in the history of Dragon Ball. If you go back to the very first Dragon Ball movie, The Legend of Shenron, known in the dub as The Curse of the Blood Rubies, there's a character named Panji in that film. Now, while the names are not identical because one is more pun-based and one is more katakana-based, for us English speakers, there isn't really that much of a difference, and it's a thing that only makes sense if you are Japanese or if you're studying Japanese. Something else related to that is this recurring joke about Goku getting Glorio's name wrong. If you only have seen the dub, or even in some cases if you've actually watched it subbed or read the manga, this is something that's been lost in translation. There were times in the original Dragon Ball manga that Goku got people's names wrong as a gag. And again, even if you're watching it subtitled, this is hard to figure out because a lot of it has to do with certain spellings in Japanese, certain things that only make sense to fluent Japanese speakers, certain cultural things that involve the Japanese. And so when you're translating it to English, it becomes challenging to carry those jokes over. A good example of that is, remember in Dragon Ball Z when King Kai makes people make him laugh in order to train with him? I've seen Dragon Ball Z in 3 different languages, Japanese, Spanish, and English, and the jokes are completely different in all 3 versions because you can't just translate the Japanese in this instance because it's pun-based. No one's going to get it. Nobody who speaks English is going to get it. So instead what they did is they kind of made up their own puns. When it comes to localizing something from Japan, this is a challenge that's existed for decades now, and it's nothing new here with Daima. The last point on this I want to make is this whole thing about Supreme Kais being called Glins. Glins is a simplification. What they're actually saying is Gurindo. And you have to remember that the Japanese language has a totally different alphabet than English or Spanish or any of that. So these things become difficult to translate. Gurindo is an anagram for a word donguri, which means acorn. These are things that are going to continue on in Daima, but I won't be talking about them anymore after this episode on this Easter egg video because they are sort of recurring things. So in the future, I may reference this video as a guide for those who hop on later who may have missed this video to understand those things more. Goma reveals that he not only kidnapped Dende to maybe use him as a hostage, but also because he wants Dende to eventually create a new set of Dragon Balls for him to use, which means that he was not planning to take the demonic Dragon Balls from the Tamagami, at least not currently, and we find out later from King Kadan, that the Tamagami are very, very, very dangerous, and maybe even Goma himself doesn't think that he can defeat them. So Dende may be his only option for getting a wish granted at this point. Of course, that begs the question, why not just ask Neba to make more Dragon Balls? Is that impossible for him to do? Will this be explained? Time will tell. The men guarding the castle instantly recognize Pansy as being a princess. So let's get this straight. You're telling me that Toriyama introduced 2 new characters, a hotshot pilot, albeit quiet, who dresses and behaves kind of like Han Solo, and a princess? Yeah, man, this ain't no coincidence, bro. There is a lot of Star Wars in this program. Way more than I was expecting. The original trio of heroes from the original first 1977 Star Wars film was Han, Luke, and Leia. So I guess Goku would be, Luke Skywalker. Would Supreme Kai be Obi-Wan Kenobi? Maybe he's one of the droids. In the trailer that came out earlier in the summertime, this image popped up and I was thinking, man, that reminds me a little bit of Dr. Miyu from Dragon Ball GT. But that's not who it is. It is King Kadan, the king of the third demon realm, who actually looks a little bit more like Eggman from Sonic the Hedgehog, or every JRPG king in history. So here is where the plot thickened. King Kadan asked Glorio about him saying he was going to bring somebody powerful enough to defeat Majin Buu, which is of course Goku. However, Glorio told everybody that the king sent him on the mission. Oh boy. We saw Glorio quietly sneaking around Goma's palace, but at this point he has his own intentions. Is he secretly working for Dr. Arinsu or somebody else who has not been revealed yet? Supreme Kai confirms what we all knew. I did a video about it earlier this week, that as of right now, he's not as powerful as Goku. And of course, if you keep following the timeline later on with Dragon Ball Super, he would never, ever catch up to Goku. The only time he may have been stronger than Goku was in the distant past, if even that. The king himself says that Glorio's the one that told him he could find someone to beat Goma, which means that Glorio has his own intentions. Once again, more confirmations in this episode. Earlier this summer, I discussed that one of the big plot threads that's going to be sort of the villains of Dragon Ball Daima following the villains is this idea that after Dabura's death in the Majin Buu arc, there would be several people gunning for the throne of the Great Demon King. And now we're seeing it play out once again beyond Goma. This king wants Goku to defeat Goma so that he can take over the demon realm, and says that things will be peaceful if he is in charge. So the information that I got back in the summertime, while preliminary, was certainly one that was accurate. Then we have this fun little moment where he offers the hand in marriage of Pansy to whoever defeats Goma, which would be Goku, but Pansy is not okay with this whatsoever. And Goku, of course, reveals that he's married and already has kids. And that's when they realize that Goku is actually an adult and was turned back to being a kid, which is literally something that they thought Glorio had told them. So once again, Glorio's bed of lies, Glorio's house of cards of lies begins to fall. This is what I think about Glorio.
Why the you lying? Why you always lying?
I'm so happy I get to use that meme twice in 1 week. It's an oldie, but it's a classic. We now have confirmation from multiple characters that the Tamagamis are even more powerful than Goma, and presumably, probably stronger physically at least, than Degesu or Dr. Arinsu. Anyway, so the king wants Goku to test his mettle against his men. And if Goku can prove his power, then he would be more than welcome to a plane to replace the one that was stolen from Glorio at the end of episode 2. Now, Goku can't say no to a fight and actually treats this fight as training for him, and offers to give the Supreme Kai his Nioibo, his power pole, while the king tells his subordinates to not hold back and to go as hard as they possibly can. But no killing is allowed. If you saw the episode and you know Goku, you know what to expect. Goku went in and absolutely just ran through these guys with like a hot knife through butter with absolute ease. Goku gave these guys an absolute shellacking and was one-shotting them like they were all a bunch of white belts and he's the king black belt. Their weapons didn't work, like nothing could touch Goku here. But without a doubt, the most memorable moment of the episode is when Goku was surrounded, when he had his arms and legs grabbed and tapped into Super Saiyan, albeit briefly, to power out of it. This was a beautiful animation shot. It looked great. And to me, here's something you may not remember. People have been making comparisons with Daima and Dragon Ball GT. And as we discussed, there is a lot of GT in this show. However, remember the first time that Kid Goku and GT got into Super Saiyan form? It was also in episode 5 during the battle with Legic. So it's interesting that both Daima and GT introduce or reintroduce Super Saiyan Kid Goku in their 5th episodes. Now, I've seen people floating around this theory that Goku here with the aura around him is him tapping into a form called Super Saiyan Power, which was not even a real form, but basically Goku accessing Super Saiyan in his base, which I did a whole video on years ago, which I'll link in the upper right in the cards and at the end of this video, all about Super Saiyan Power. I don't believe that's what's going on here. I believe this is just Goku's energy sort of calming down and him sort of going back into base. However, it would not surprise me if Goku figures out how to do it. We know based on trailers and on the intro to this very show that Goku is going to tap into Super Saiyan 2 as well as other forms later on. And this is just another example of Goku once again becoming better accustomed to the Demon Realm atmosphere and better accustomed to his new body. Another little Easter egg that I thought was cool was Goku finishing off the final ogre with a flick to the forehead, which was very, very similar to what Beerus did to him in Battle of Gods when he was in Super Saiyan 3, and something similar Goku did going back to some of those tournaments in Dragon Ball when he was just smashing these these normies that never train. The Supreme Kai brings up that there are still more people coming, like Bulma, Vegeta, Piccolo, etc. Bulma's still kind of trying to rework Supreme Kai's ship, and he needs a new pin number, or a pin number, for Warp. However, what ends up happening is there isn't much that can be done, but there's one person who can come to the rescue for them. This character right here is one that I revealed a while ago and said his name was Hibiscus because his pun, like Glorio and Pansy, is the hibiscus flower. In the subtitles, they call him Hibis, and if you listen to the Japanese, it sounds like they're saying Hibisu or Hibisku. Either way, the name is a pun on the hibiscus flower, and he is asked to go to the normal realm, the outside world as they call it, to go pick up Vegeta and everybody else. And as we see in the intro to Daima, he ends up being a party member with the others because there's going to be 2 different groups. There's Goku, Glorio, Pansy, and the Supreme Kai. Then there's Hibis or Hibiscus, Bulma, Vegeta, and Piccolo, and that's our 2 teams going down to the Demon Realm. He is the one that's reporting for duty for the king to go back to the real world. Well, not the real world, the outside world. The Demon Realm is real too, my bad. Now, something about Hibiscus, a lot of people have pointed out that this kinda looks like a member of the Yardrat race. Remember, there's 2 different versions of Yardrats. There was one that was drawn for the Dragon Ball Z anime and later came back in Super, and then there was the ones that were done for Dragon Ball Heroes from Toriyama himself that closer resembled this character. Now, the theory has been out there now for weeks that because the Yardrats, the other kind of Yardrat has pointy ears, that they may be from the Demon Realm as well. And we've discussed that it's possible the reason as to why we have Yardrats in Universe 2 and Universe 7, as Dragon Ball Super revealed, is because perhaps they did come from the Demon Realm. This was not confirmed in this episode, but I would not be surprised if this character is our first look at a Yardrat that was originated from the Demon Realm. Maybe it does tie in. Maybe the Yardrats are indeed another race from the Demon Realm, and that could explain why they know so many magical abilities like Force Spirit Fission, like Gigantism, which the Namekians also know, and of course, like teleportation known as the Shunkan Ito. In English, instantaneous movement. The dub calls it instant transmission. Obviously, this guy doesn't know that, because if he did, he'd be able to get around with that technique faster. But he's the one going to Earth to take everybody and bring them to the demon realm. Now, Hibiscus reveals that he's got this device right here that sort of acts as a tool as a viewer to view things. Now, it turns out that Pansy also has one of these, a green one, and it has not been revealed yet, but I did discuss that in a stream, I think I did, or in a video, that Pansy and Hibiscus, whatever, that both names work, that they're going to use it to communicate with each other. And this is a way for him to find Earth and to find, of course, the temple, the sacred realm, which is where Bulma's hard at work on Supreme Kai's ship. So that's a cool device. It is not a dragon radar. It looks like a dragon radar, but it is not a dragon radar. There was one segment of the episode that I'm having a hard time explaining myself. It's this little random 2D moment where the king is asking his subordinates to find a mid-sized plane for him from the Nemofi gang. Now, this whole thing was so bizarre to me, and this is all being done on purpose for comedic value, and it looks like something right out of Paper Mario. So I really am unsure of what this is supposed to be referencing, but I will look into it, because I thought it was pretty clever, and I liked seeing the different, the whole totally different kind of style here, I guess you can say. I don't know. Goku agrees to bring Pansy along and be her protector, because they're going to need a tech whiz in case the ships break down. With Bulma being in the other crew and she's not in the demon realm yet, then this obviously would create an opportunity for Pansy to have something to do and to be useful. Remember, this is kind of like a JRPG party. You've got Goku as the melee fighter. You've got Gloria sort of like the back row, kind of the guy with the gun. Then you've got Supreme Kai with his magical abilities. And then Pansy as the tech whiz, who also has magical abilities. So if you've played JRPGs and you know about class-based systems and things of that nature, Final Fantasy Tactics and stuff like that, you should be eating this show up. Near the end of the episode, the Supreme Kai's suspicions begin to form even more so. We've been talking about this earlier on in this video about Glorio's lying and suspicious behavior, and now it looks like Supreme Kai is straight up telling Goku, and he talks about the discoveries that King Kadan did not know that they were turned into kids, which Glorio told them that he was requested by the king to go get Goku in the outside world, and that he was the one that told Glorio to go help them. However, as Supreme Kai says, it looks like Glorio is the one that went to the king. So his suspicions are very unclear. Now, I do want to discuss a theory that has been going around about Glorio, which is not entirely correct, but may have some merit. A lot of people have noticed that Glorio looks a lot like Mira from the Dragon Ball video game world. And we've talked in the past about how Dr. Arinsu, being adept at magic and science, kind of makes her a lot like Toa. They're not the same character. Mira and Toa are not Glorio and Dr. Arinsu. They are not the same character. However, I would not be surprised if Toriyama, who designed all of these characters, is borrowing from Mira and Toa without really bringing them into Daima or into what some would consider his canon. Just, they're going to be video game villains, and they always have been. It could still be, though, that it's Toriyama's way of kind of borrowing aspects of Mira and Toa and creating Glorio and, of course, Dr. Arinsu. That's a theory that I've seen a lot of people have, because there is a resemblance between Glorio and Mira. There's definitely a resemblance there, and I'm sure by the end of Daima, his intentions will be clear, although I'm gonna guess that we're not gonna know until probably near the very end of the show. As the ship is taking off, it turns out that maybe there was too much weight put in the back with all the luggage that Pansy brought on board, and the ship begins to go down, probably because the engine is malfunctioning. But don't forget, Pansy is a tech whiz, so she should be able to fix it. That being said, though, them having issues with the plane once again really reminds me of The Empire Strikes Back and when the hyperdrive on the Millennium Falcon was broken for the majority of the film. I'm not saying it was a direct ripoff, that's not what I'm saying, but the inspiration is certainly there, and we've seen enough other Star Wars references in just this episode alone, notwithstanding all the other ones we've seen in the first 4 episodes of Daima, that I would not be surprised if Toriyama saw the original trilogy before he started working on Daima and just said, hey, let me pick this, let me borrow that, which he has done in the past. To me, I'm fine with it because I love the original trilogy of Star Wars. It's some of my favorite movies ever made, and I love Dragon Ball. And because I get these Easter eggs, it actually makes the series more enjoyable for me. So, Daima Episode 5, lots of Star Wars stuff, and the story will continue going forward. How do they get out of this? We'll find out next week. In the meantime, check out the videos on your screen right now. Learn about the history of Dabura, my documentary on the life of Akira Toriyama, and a very well thought out theory from me and Starblast about Super Saiyan 4 in Daima. Watch all those videos. Thank you again. Take care of yourself and each other.